Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. I think we have a quorum, so we're going to get this proceeding underway since we have a full agenda, looking to adjourn around 3:30. So I guess we'll just start off by introducing ourselves, starting here in the room, and then we'll go to folks that are joining us remotely. Rick Hopkins is my name, supervisor and chair of council.
I'm Allie Wells. I'm the coordinator for the Vermont Ag Water Quality Partnership with VACD.
I'm Corey Ross. I'm with the Windham County Natural Resources Conservation District and one of the two district manager representatives.
I am Michelle Monroe. I'm the executive director of VACD.
I'm Willie Nickerson. I'm the NEK Supervisory Union rep to council.
Marley Roop with Vermont DEC.
Claire Ireland, I am the administrator of council.
Julia King, communications manager for council and VACD.
Do you want me to call on that?
Sure.
Katie Stiles, you want to introduce yourself?
Katie Stiles, district manager for Rutland NRCC.
Thanks, Katie. Sarah Denzel.
Sarah Denzel, Orleans County Conservation District Manager. Actually, today the board decided to call me the executive director, so I'll have to get used to saying that. District manager rep. Yep.
Thanks, Sarah. Bill Manor.
Bill Manor, supervisor at Aquechi and alternate for Southeast Union.
Thanks, Bill. Lena.
Hi, good afternoon.
Oh,
sorry, Lena. Lena, you go. I always get Lena, Nina.
Sorry, I didn't enunciate enough.
Who are you asking for, Lena?
I was Lena with an L, please.
Okay, I'm Lena Smith, and I'm the Grants and Finance Manager for VACD and Council.
Thanks, Lena. Now Nina with an N, please.
Nina Gage, Assistant Director, Division of Water Quality, Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets.
Thank you. Linda.
Linda Course, chair of the Windham County District, and here is the SU rep.
Thank you.
Southeast SU rep. Sorry.
Thanks, Linda. Jess.
Hey everyone, Jess Miller, Grants and Finance Manager for VACD.
Thank you. Alvina.
Yeah, Alvina, Singer Harvey, White River, Supervisory Union rep.
Thank you. Richard.
Richard Noel, District, Franklin County District, and I'm the supervisor.
Okay, Molly.
Chair.
Hi there, Molly Varner, District Manager for the Grand Isle County NRCD.
Thank you. Laura.
Hi, Laura DePietro, Agency of Ag, Water Quality Director.
And I think I got everyone.
Who are the phone numbers? Did you get those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Richard and Alvina are the phone numbers.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. For those of you who are not here in the room, you are missing some exceptionally good snacks, but we won't dwell on that. So first item would be to review and approve the August meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Linda, seconded by Richard. Any further discussion on the August meeting minutes? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. A resounding unanimous approval for those of us that are voting. Very good. Thank you for all that participated in keeping track of those meeting minutes from August. Next up would be the FY25 NRCC overview.
Thanks, everyone. I'll give a quick overview of fiscal year 2025. I sent out a report, but I'm going to be going through a slideshow that just gives a little bit about our accomplishments of the year, and then happy to answer any questions.
Who's speaking? Claire?
Sorry, Richard, that was me. That was Claire.
Okay. I can't see you, so unless I could recognize your voice. I'm out of luck.
Thanks, no, but and that's a good reminder. We'll identify ourselves when we're speaking through the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So fiscal year 2025 ended June 30th, 2025. The big, thing I want to show and talk about are the grants that we made to districts. We did 106 sub-agreements to districts, which is about 25 more than the previous fiscal year. Most of that increase has come from our enhancement block grant, which is the new iteration of the DEC design and implementation block grant. This grant funds a lot of individual projects as well as project development. So we are seeing a growth in participation in that grant. Starting at the top, a number of the grants we manage are available, or I guess I would just say they are sort of owed by statute to each conservation district. Districts are entitled to funds under these grants. So the first one is our Core Services Fund. This is the legislative appropriation that we get. And we had agreements with all 14 districts. Tactical basin planning is in statute. Every district is eligible to participate. We have 13 districts participating who have opted in. And then going down, we have all of our districts participating in some way in the Agricultural Clean Water Initiative Program, AG-CWIP, though some districts cover other districts or hold grants on behalf of other districts. So that's why there's only 13 sub-agreements here. We were closing out our project development grant, which was a previous iteration of our current enhancement grant. So that was closed out last year, along with our block design and implementation block grant. We are now moving into our new enhancement grant, and so that started last fiscal year. We had 27 agreements sort of off the bat with that program, and we are releasing actually another RFA, I believe today, or yesterday. So this is an ongoing grant agreement. And then Trees for Streams is an ongoing program, and we had 20 agreements under that program last year.
Claire, that line item for enhancement,
yeah,
for those 27, does that include the new project development and the new design and implementation?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So previously, council held two separate grants. One grant covered project development. The other grant covered design and implementation. The new iteration of to one, so the entire phase from project development, identifying projects all the way through to completion is under a single grant. So, so we managed 106 grants, about and this is we are still closing out our books and finalizing. We have a couple of invoice corrections to make. So this number is a little preliminary, but it was about 2.6 million that went to districts through council. So the breakdown of our FY25 expenditure, about 12% went to council, and that covers our overhead, basic administrative expenses, as well as the program management of the grants and direct services to districts. So I'll talk a little bit about what those direct services are, but that was 12% of our budget. And then the remaining 88% was passed through to districts in grants and contracts. So high level of what we did last year, we had 4 board meetings and 12 finance committee meetings, just supporting the basic functioning of the entity. Both of those functions are covered by our core services agreement. We support districts with election guidance every year. That is a role that council plays in helping to guide districts in the procedures and issue a recommended timeline for district supervisor elections. We collectively hosted 36 open office hour days between me and Lena and Julia. And those are office hours where district managers or other district staff can stop in for guidance on finances, administration, communications, etc. We had representation in a number of state and national initiatives, including the National Association of State Conservation Agencies, or NASCA. And then at the state level, we were active in the County and Regional Governance Study Committee, which was an initiative of the legislature, as well as ongoing involvement in Act 76 and Act 59. Act 76 is the Clean Water Act and establishes the clean water service providers and the formula grants. Act 59 is the 30 by 30 initiative. And then in addition to that, council by statute has a seat on the Environmental Justice Advisory Council. So Jennifer Byrne has been our representative on that. And finally, yes, the County and Regional Governance Study Committee. A lot of our time this past year has actually been spent on these last three items, the organizational capacity building and state resources. So there's been a lot of push over the past year to get council more aligned with state procedures. There's been a determination that since we are in statute as an agency of the state, that we should be aligning more with the state. And so we have one agenda item today that relates to that. And then along those lines, we have been creating more policies, forms for council, as well as a council website on the state website. And then I think one of the overarching themes of last year was just navigating federal uncertainty. While council does not have a lot of federal grants itself, there was a lot of need to understand more about impacts in this space, particularly with executive orders. So one of the roles council can play is taking issues from the districts or from council itself to the state attorney general's office for legal advice or guidance, or potentially for the AG's office to take action on those items. So we forwarded the AG's office a lot of information and tried to help districts as we could to navigate federal uncertainty, including talking with our state partners about potential flexibility with state level grants and how to backfill frozen federal funding sources. So that's FY25. I did submit a report. I'm not going to go over the full written report, but there is more detail in there about what we did in FY25. I guess I'll pause here and see if there's any questions about FY25 before I get into our current focus areas.
I'm wondering about your open office hours first. I'm not sure where your office is. And then I'm just curious about how many people actually took advantage of that.
Yeah, so all of the open office hours are online. We've had those by Zoom, and we just send out emails in advance notifying people. My open office hours tend to be, the goal is to have them every other week. And I think Lena and Julia have been a little bit less frequent. But I would say, I don't have a count offhand precisely, but I think we have helped, I would say at least 12 of the 14 districts between all three of us on some issue throughout the year. And on average, I would say I get 1 to 2 people per open office hours.
That's quite good. That's a lot.
Yeah. So, and then I can't speak to Julia or Lena's, what you guys are seeing, but anecdotally from what you've told me, you tend to help, again, 2 to 3 people per open office hours. So, I don't know if Corey or.
Yeah, I've been a frequent visitor of your office hours, and I usually come to you with something on fire, and it is extremely helpful.
Not to call you out,
No.
Sorry. In your capacity as DM rep, just wanted to give you an opportunity.
Sure.
But that's the sort of thing we help, is just sort of, if anybody has an urgent issue, it's an opportunity to pop in.
And Claire, the open office hours are really not exclusively, but primarily directed toward district managers.
Primarily.
Rather than supervisors. They're certainly willing to attend.
So we put out notice in the newsletter every month that lists the open office hour days and just says, if you're not on my mailing list and you'd like to attend, please just email me. So I'm happy to talk to supervisors, but it has been primarily geared at district managers. And recently we've been adding district administrative staff to those emails. So there are 3 districts that now have dedicated finance staff who have requested to be on those distribution lists and who I've been working with pretty closely.
I would say, this is Julia speaking, mine was mostly staff because I was helping design materials or helping them with events. So it was staff that I stopped doing this at the end of the year because people weren't attending mine, but it was when I was new to my role, it was a good way of people knowing I was there. So now they feel more comfortable just coming to me when they need help.
Yeah, and that's a good point. This is Claire again. This isn't the only way we help districts one-on-one. Honestly, most of the time it's scheduling individual meetings at request. But the open office hours gives people some certainty that there will be a time to catch me if there's anything burning that you need to talk about. So, anyone else have more to add on that or other questions about FY25? If not, I'm just going to give a brief overview of FY26. This reflects the budget that the board approved at our last meeting. But I just wanted to show the breakdown in alignment with what happened last year. Our budget for this year is 12% overhead and direct services from council, and then 88% pass through to districts. And here's a little bit more about what we've been doing, aligning with the state. Some of this is last fiscal year, some of this is this fiscal year. But we have gotten our new logo, our new website, which is live. So that is active, and we are actively posting new grant opportunities to that page now as well.
Yeah, that screenshot's not even accurate anymore.
I know. It's an active website. So this is a big accomplishment, and we will be posting all of our meeting minutes, all of our meeting materials to this website going forward. So just so you know where that's located. And then our email address for the entity as a whole. And what we're currently working on, we are in the middle of district election season, so trying to provide districts with some support around their elections. I'm working on developing some more supervisory union rep guidance about how reps get elected, what the role of a supervisory union rep is, and just some general overview. We are working on a per diem increase. We requested an increase from $50 to $100 with our latest FY27 budget request. I won't hear back about that request until the budget is complete or is submitted publicly. But that is an active area we're looking into, and something I think we'll need to talk more about in the future, because there are some areas of this that get a little bit weird with our statute in particular. We're working on state insurance, both trying to figure out the back end of a very complicated administrative system with the state. So that's ongoing. Space and office building and state office buildings for both council and for districts. We're working with building and general services on that. Working with aligning council with the state's procurement and grant making policies. So this is on our agenda for today. We're working on getting council a phone number with the state. We have submitted our FY27 core services request, and we're continuing to be active in the county and regional governance technical advisory group. So, any other questions?
Claire, just real quick, I know we've attempted to go through the process with both the Agency of Ag and Agency of Natural Resources. How are things going with BGS?
I am waiting on a response from BGS. Essentially, the last I heard was that they were looking into some other options for us. I've requested a meeting and I have not heard back from them, so I need to poke them again to try to get a meeting. So
okay. Yeah, I in general anticipate there's a lot going on in that space right now, as you can all imagine. But I think if I'll just request, Claire, if you can try to keep me in the loop, I can try to just keep sort of a pending discussion. It was, a little bit while ago that, you know, we went through the process when you requested that from our agency directly. And, you know, obviously a lot has changed and is shifting actively. So I'd love to stay in the loop on that if possible and see if there's anything we can do to support from our end.
Absolutely. I can keep you in the loop. Marley, I can keep you in the loop. I think what we've heard is that the return to office orders are complicating things. Just a lot of uncertainty about what space will be available within state buildings. And I imagine, like you hinted at, they are likely busy with that themselves. But I am still hoping to get a meeting. This is an issue that's becoming more urgent just with the government shutdowns, how frequent those have been, how long those have been. Districts are heavily impacted by not being able to get into federal office spaces where their offices are located. So we're trying to push this forward. So that's the current urgency is not actually for office space for council itself, but for districts. So.
Okay, that's a different plan than what we had talked about months ago.
So the council office space request is still open and on the table. But I think this separate request for office space for districts is something I brought to BGS initially.
Oh, okay.
Council was sort of getting looped in on the back end and of that conversation after the denial came through from ANR. So there's sort of two separate tracks that we've been working on this issue.
I know I'm beating a dead horse, but what's the problem with the per diem increases? What do they throw back at you?
They haven't thrown anything at me yet.
Okay.
So
when they say
yeah,
tighten
I'm
your
sorry.
belt, I say what belt?
Richard, yeah, thank you. I will keep you in the loop and I will be reporting to the finance committee. I imagine as soon as I hear, you will probably be the first to know what the response will be. I just haven't heard back on the request yet.
It's not that I'm waiting by the phone, but it's the idea behind it, showing a value.
Yeah.
Of the people you're trying to keep on these committees.
Who have you put the request into?
So we worked with the Agency of Administration on this. There was some question last year about whether we would submit it to the Agency of Agriculture's business office along with our budget request. Their initial review of that suggested that I should take it directly to Agency of Agriculture since council is a standalone entity. I'm sorry, that I should take it directly to Agency of Administration. So I tried to take it directly to Agency of Administration. They advised me to bring it to the business office at Agency of Ag. So that's what I did is I submitted it to Agency of Agriculture's business office with our FY27 budget request.
Okay.
So that process, I think as it is in statute, it's sort of envisioned that process, the increase request happens along with the budget request. So that's what we've done.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
There is actually a process for requesting an above statutory level.
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
It's new.
Okay.
Is that a decision that's made by the Agency of Administration or by the legislature?
By the governor's office initially, and then it goes to the legislature as part of the budget process. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. This is a new process. And when we were talking through this, both with AOA and with the Agency of Agriculture's business office, it sounds like very few people have taken advantage of the process to request increased rates. So we're
Probably
sort of
because very few people expect it to work.
we were advised not that it was unlikely to be something the governor found to be a priority within the budget, but we're trying anyway. So, Sarah, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, Claire, I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about your exploration of insurance. Are you talking about health insurance and or workman's comp or both? And particularly obviously interested in health insurance, and if that's something that you're able to explore, and if so, what a timeline might be for that?
I've asked I'm working with this issue on the Agency of Administration. I've asked them about health insurance. I've also asked the AG's office about health insurance. It's sort of off the table because the way we're being included, the way that districts are being included in state insurance is that we have a line item, a line in statute, a separate part of statute that says for the purposes of this chapter, natural resource conservation districts will be treated as state agencies. The chapter it's referring to does not outline health insurance or any employee benefits. It only outlines things like entity types of organizational types of insurance. So like general liability, auto insurance, cyber insurance, that type of insurance. So that's what we have access to. So unfortunately, access to state employee type benefits, including insurance, is not possible with the current statute language. So the request is in with Agency of Administration. I've solicited information from districts about your current coverage back in, I believe, September or October. And that has been submitted to the Agency of Administration. They are going to be looking at that to try to set rates, basically, and sort of put a number to what they view as being the scope of liability for covering the districts. I don't have a response from them yet on what those numbers look like, but that's where we're at in the process. They may come back and request additional information. Part of the challenge with this process has been that insuring districts is very different than insuring a state agency, even though statute directs that to happen. Because districts are independent entities, they make a lot of, they're not subject to state of Vermont rules or agency guidance. They also own property directly, whereas the state tends to consolidate that within building and general services. And so it's just a different way to approach insuring an entity. And they're trying to essentially create a new process to evaluate our policy, basically. So it's been messy, a lot of back and forth, and I do anticipate they'll have more questions for us.
Okay. I don't know if it's possible, and I know that we kind of keep going around and around about this, about, since we now, it seems like, are more clear about health insurance, or maybe I'm just now becoming clear and you all have been clear, about VACD potentially looking into having like a group health insurance option. And sorry, again, if we've already gone around about this, but obviously right now it is a particular issue for us. Talked to a staff person just this morning about how a significant challenge it is right now, and that, we don't offer much health insurance, and it's not good that we don't offer good health insurance.
Yeah. We have looked into this through VACD. Essentially, we're not able to offer a health insurance plan through VACD itself. That was it. So there's a whole history behind why we can't do that, and it relates to the Affordable Care Act and the interpretation by the IRS and the Department of Labor of what constitutes an employer under that legislation. So essentially, since that law came into effect, and since there was this ruling at the federal level, associations no longer can provide group health insurance plans to their membership. The only way to create a group health insurance plan is to either have associated entities, so like a parent company and a subsidiary company could have a shared plan, or if it's being provided through a like a union, or like an employees union, that kind of structure. Those are the two easiest ways to span across entities and consolidate health insurance costs. There may be other mechanisms, but we've been advised both by Blue Cross Blue Shield and by some other insurance experts that we've consulted that VACD itself is not able to provide that.
Okay.
I'm happy to talk. Yeah, sorry, Linda.
Yeah, this is Linda. So on that note, how do towns, and because a lot of times districts are compared to being an entity similar to towns, how do towns handle health insurance? Where do they get their health insurance?
I
I can answer that. Just from my years of reporting on town budgets, towns have their own, like districts, they have their own contracts for health insurance.
Presumably they're getting killed right now with premium increases.
Yeah. And sometimes there are some, I think, and we saw this like with the Affordable Care Act, like all these small businesses suddenly couldn't get health insurance through their Chamber of Commerce either.
Yeah.
So that like killed chambers of commerce because now nobody had an incentive to be a member because that was the main incentive was.
And this impacted VLCT too, because I believe VLCT used to offer health insurance, but now they no longer do. They only offer the organizational insurances. So
thank you.
I do think the union idea is worth exploring. We should definitely look into that. We should talk with some experts and attorneys and see if we could do that for our staffs. And but the question would then become like, would we end up with district managers not eligible? Because you're management, like we'd have to really look into it and what the ins and outs would be, but it might be worth doing. And it might also be something we could talk to NACD about, like how do other parts of the country do it? How do districts and associations?
I would love that. And I think also, sorry, Claire, I think the other thing, Michelle, that I understand about unions is that we can't just simply do that through unions because the unions aren't officially an entity yet. They're just like in statute. They aren't like a thing really. And then of course, the next question is like, is the union, once it becomes like its own entity, is that a state entity or is that its own, so then it gets back into this continual problem of ours of like, are we state or are we not,
Sarah, I think the union is being confused. It would be like an employee union. So all of the district staff would unionize.
NRCC union.
And they would have a union. And the union would then be able to purchase health insurance. Like this goes back to like, you get those unions that aren't with a specific company. They represent people who have particular skills, like the Screen Actors Guild or the Writers Guild. So we could do the same sort of thing, potentially. So we would have to just investigate it.
I think that's definitely an issue we can peg just to look at more in this current fiscal year. Sarah, Corey, as the district manager reps, I think we'd probably be asking for your help in that, exploration and having conversations with the districts. So yeah. Okay. I am looking at our agenda.
Yeah.
We're a little behind. So are there other questions before we move on?
Great. I don't think this item requires any sort of vote for approval, just more or less for your information. So I did want to just pause for a minute. I think a few people either came into the room after our introductions or joined on telephone. So if you wouldn't mind quickly just introducing yourself and then we can move on.
Yeah, I'll start. I'm Kate Bullard. I'm a supervisor from the White River District.
Thank you.
And then Emily Newmer.
All right, so Emily joined us. Was there anybody else that joined us after the intro?
I think it was just Emily.
Okay, great.
Rick, just for a point of clarification, so there are now, I think, 3 or 4 of you from the Winooski White River Supervisory Union. Who's the actual voting member for that? For your supervisory union?
That would be Rick.
Okay. Just was trying to get that clear. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, it's good to see as much turnout from the White River District. So, but yeah, I'm the Central Supervisory Union representative authorized to vote. So, very good. We'll move along to the next item on our bountiful agenda, that being administrative updates.
So the good news is I think we covered a lot of these topics in the presentation I just gave. So I won't go too far into the weeds here, but I think the first item we did want to share a little bit about was the website. Julia, would turn that over to you.
Yeah, so I've talked about the website before. It's now live, conservation.vermont.gov. And as Blake said, we're continuously updating it. We just added a new funding opportunities where we'll be putting the grants RFAs there. I think this is the first full board meeting that we've been doing on Teams. This integrates with the room that we're in, so we're going to continue using Teams instead of Zoom. So I'll be sending out the 2026 meeting invites with the Teams link. I can also send some guidance if people are still figuring out like how to unmute themselves and how to share the screen. I can share guidance on that. Both Claire and I have partner@vermont.gov email addresses, and I'm going to start sending meeting invites and materials out using my partner email address. I just didn't want to use it without you guys knowing to look at. It's still julia.king, but it's just got a different ending. So when I send out the supervisory union reports or the meeting invites, you will be getting that from my partner email to just try to keep it all in one place. And then the finance committee meetings are all, I think you've already been doing them on Teams. So we'll be sending invites out as well for those.
And
Why
so
did you
just-
switch from Zoom?
So we're switching to Teams because to comply with open meeting law, we're having our meetings in the National Life Building, thanks to our partnership with ANR. And they already have cameras built into the rooms that uses Teams. So instead of us having to bring equipment that doesn't match with the room, we are using Teams because it matches. We're also recording them through Teams and through our partner accounts and through the NRCC account from Microsoft, we're able to host those recordings through the state servers. Mm-hmm. So this is all part of our aligning with state materials and a bit more separation between VACD and council.
And I think the big reason we're making this switch is just what Julia just said, is that we are recording, the recordings of the meetings will be stored within the state systems. And that means that the state has ownership of those materials rather than it being stored in a partner, a partner account somewhere where the state could lose access. So it's just best practice, trying to align with state best practices in data management, public records, and open meeting law.
Okay, sounds like a good explanation to me.
Thanks, Richard.
You'll miss my pretty face.
We'll teach you how to get Teams on your computer, Richard.
Oh, geez.
All right. Well, thanks, Julia. We will, of course, send the website around again. We've sent that around, but I do hope people will check that out because it is live. And if you have any recommendations about anything you'd like to see on the website, please let us know. Okay. The next item is probably going to require a little discussion, and it would require a board vote. I realize I didn't indicate that on the agenda, but this is a procurement policy and waiver. I'm going to give a little background and also share my screen to go over the waiver. As reported in previous board meetings, there has been some back and forth with the Agency of Administration about the degree to which council is subject to certain types of state guidance. The history is that, at one of our previous board meetings, I brought our current procurement policy. Our state agency representatives highlighted that our policy was not, it was not using the state's format or potentially in alignment with the existing state bulletins. So the direction was given by the board for me to take the issue to the AG's office. The AG's office said, statute says you're an agency of the state, therefore you're subject to its agency rules. I took that to AOA, and the Agency of Administration said, well, you're actually a little bit of a weird entity. We're going to give you an exemption. But then they turned around and took it to their own attorneys, who then said that, yes, we are subject to the guidance. So it's been a long path to get here. But the conclusion from both the AG's office and the Agency of Administration is that council is subject to state guidance around both grants and procurement. That said, we can't actually fully comply because we don't have access to state systems and we don't have state employees. So I worked with the Agency of Administration to develop the form I'm going to show you. This is a standard form. So this is a form that's used by every state agency that needs to officially request an exemption to state rules. So we're not unusual in using this. This is sort of the standard procedure for how to do this. But what this does is it identifies the exact places of state guidance that we can't comply with or that we would like an exemption on. And then it describes what we're going to do instead. And the idea is that we would review this with the board today. I would be asking for approval. And then if we get approval, I would submit this to the Agency of Administration and they would indicate whether our modification or waiver is approved or not. So I'm just going to go down the list here and feel free to stop me if you have questions along the way. The first thing to note is that a lot of state guidance hinges on an appointing authority. Council does not have any elected, any types of officers that are identified in statute as appointing authorities. So we are seeking to make the board chair our appointing authority because that is the most substantively similar position. So this would just give the board chair basically approval authority over our grant and contracting process. That is in alignment with our current practice and policies. The second exemption here, our waiver, is sole source contracting. Typically, the state of Vermont understands that all contracts will go out to bid and on a competitive basis. There are some exceptions to this, and one of the common exemptions is for employee-like personnel services. This is a little bit of a strange category because if you're familiar with state or federal employee and contracting law, you know that 1099 contractors are very different than employees. Those are two separate job classifications or personnel classifications. What we're doing with council is essentially securing employee-like personal services through contract. So there's a muddying of the water. And typically, the people like myself who are serving council, typically we would be a state employee position. Because we're not, council is filling that role by contract. There is precedent for this within the state system, so we're not totally unique, but this is a exemption to basically acknowledge that reality. So the request here would be to give council the option to make employee-like personnel services contracts in a sole source manner, which means that it does not have to go out for public bid, up to $200,000 per contract. Now that's less than our current contract, but the idea would be that we would put each individual position as its own agreement, and that would be treated on a sole source basis at the determination of the board. So the board would need to vote to do this every year. Nina.
The two questions that jump to mind are, why not put all, if I hear you and this makes sense in terms of what is happening, right? Trying to get everything up to legal standard. Why not put all of the staff, VAC staff supporting NRCC under one contract? Let's say a $200,000. And then in my experience, they're going to want to see like a term limit or a time limit associated with that contract request, right? So up to a certain amount per, is it per year, per 3-year period, or just some type of term limit, or is it a certain amount per year, right? Like you said, the board would vote on an annual basis for the services to be provided. And then you set up in this waiver a term limit and a max amount.
Yeah. So this is the area that I talked most about with agency of administration, there's a couple of considerations. So we currently do all personnel contracts on a 1-year basis. And the reason for that tends to be because of budget uncertainty year to year. Council staff is supported heavily by our core services agreement as well as Ag CWIP. Ag CWIP tends to be pretty predictable over a 4-year lifespan, or I guess in the future 2 years. Core services can vary year to year depending. So, and then our other agreements that support staffing are project-based, and the amount we have available to us can vary widely on those. So there's just a lot of variability year to year with our budget. In talking with AOA, they agreed that it made sense to have 1-year agreements that would be treated sole source. They could have a provision for extension up to 5 years, which would be in alignment with existing policy and not an exemption. But realistically, we would probably not be handling it as a extension because we would be resetting a budget and scope of work every year with the board. So it would be a annual contract for the fiscal year every year. The reason for not lumping everybody together is because there may be reasons for council to want to treat different council positions differently. So in the past, the administrator role has been held by a district manager. That's a potential in the future if the board chose to go that direction. The grants managers essentially what this is doing is it's just giving council more options for how to handle its personnel's contracts. It doesn't lock council into sole sourcing. It also doesn't lock council into, well, I guess the dollar threshold would essentially lock council into treating at least certain classes of position as separate contracts. So we could talk about this $200,000 threshold. The reason the $200,000 threshold is here is to try to set some amount of upper limit, so it's not just open-ended. If we were to lump everything together, the upper limit would probably have to be relatively high, something like $700,000 or more. So I don't know. I'm interested in thoughts, Nina.
Thanks, Claire. That's helpful, and I appreciate that AOA is advising on this content. I think that's key for a successful sole source. The only other comment I have is likely that so in the kind of concept of an every year process or an every scope process, typically any sole source, even if it's included under a waiver, is still going to require a variety of appointing authorities approvals, including the agency of administration. So just like be aware that even if you get it set up in a way and AOA is on board to give the board flexibility, there's still going to be an elongated process for review and approval of each individual contract. So I just want to name that in my experience as something that we may need to be aware of.
Plan time accordingly.
Yeah, this relates to an item a little bit further down in this list, which has to do with the timing of our contracts and flexibility there. That's good to know about AOA approval of each individual sole source. I can ask them about that because it didn't come up in our conversation. What they said conceptually is, we don't want to change what you're doing. So they're not trying to put rules on us for the sake of rules. They're trying to work with us to ensure that we have our I's dotted, our T's crossed, basically. I can ask them what they would expect from us on a yearly basis if we go this route. I don't know. But I don't know of another way to get a waiver within the state system other than treating it as a sole source. Because the other option seems to be competitive bid process every year. Does that make sense? Okay. Linda.
Yeah, I'm gonna maybe be the devil's advocate or whatever the right term is here a little bit. in listening to all this and the complexity that this seems to involve, I'm just wondering, is this worth it? What are we trying to gain with all of this? And I've been part of this right along, but it feels like it's going to make life more complicated, not simpler. And so I just have some concerns about all of this going forward.
Linda, do you mean just sort of in general moving towards being a designated state agency, or what? I'm not sure what you're.
Yes, these efforts to maybe put things in a more formal status or make us an agency, I believe I've expressed concern right from the start about moving towards being a state agency. But
even though we are one now.
And I'm not trying to negate or whatever all the work you've put into this, Claire, but I have concerns that this is going to make life all the more difficult for running this entity.
I would say, Linda, from my perspective, this is our best way to keep things as simple as possible. And I would say that if we don't want to be treated as an agency of the state, we will need to change our statute. Because at this point, the AG's office has weighed in, Agency of Administration has weighed in. We are on the state's radar as one of their agencies of the state. So the options that are before us are either we follow the state's guidance as written in Bulletin 3.5 and Bulletin 5, or we seek exemptions that allow us to continue operating as we have been. And so this document here is the way to continue operating as we have been. I guess I should have prefaced by saying that that's the goal with this document. The goal is not to radically change our procedures. The goal is to continue operating as smoothly as possible. But to do that, we need to have this on file. So, Nina?
Yeah, no, Linda, I hear you. And I think everyone probably agrees to some extent. But the reality is like, as we dig into clarity, right, and get a response, the response is not like, yeah, you're a state agency. The response is, yes, you're a state agency, and, right, this is what this entails. And so I think as, Claire goes through this process and there's more clarity gained, right, on what it means, then, at the same time, Claire's gotten Claire in really good communication, coordination with the Agency of Administration, then the board can put forth a recommendation of a change if needed, right? And I think that's like, in my mind, a potential future direction is if, you're not able to secure insurance or, some of the other benefits that might be aligned with being a state agency, but yet you're still required to go through all the financial processes, which are not easy by any means. It's like the vast majority of what we do is just try to follow the bulletins. Then the board can say, we want to put forth a statutory change to be a board, right, under an agency or another type of entity, right? But it's going to take clarity around what applies in each of those instances in order to be able to discuss what the best pathway is. So I think it's like,
thank you, Nina.
Yeah, that's just sorry, I'll stop there.
No, I think that's really good. One of the things that came up in my conversations with AOA is that it could, and actually with the business office of Agency of Agriculture, conversations with both entities have highlighted the fact that we can and probably should do a review of our statute. We've wanted to for a while now. One of the things that we can look at are examples of how other entities are set up. One of my to-do lists is to compile a list of those entities that are similar in structure to council to present to the board as some options of alternates if we wanted to go that route. So, for example, there's lots of other boards, some of which deal with natural resources at the state that we can look at. One of the entities that's maybe structurally most similar is actually the entity that oversees the state sheriff's association. They're county level functions that have a state agency that corresponds to them. So I'm going to be looking into that and can present that to the board as alternate options. But under our current structure, what I'm showing you today, the goal is to continue being able to operate with minimal change to our practices. So I know it sounds complicated, but ideally, this is the smoothest way to go.
And thank you, Claire. And again, I'm in great appreciation of your knowledge and all the work that you're doing researching this. I don't know. I'm a big fan of the keep it simple, sweetheart concept, and nothing to do with government is simple. It's just, I know we're being recorded. You're in a government office, but it's true.
I don't think Nina or I will disagree with you, so.
Yeah, I'm going to keep moving through just because I hope some of these other items will help flesh out the picture of what we're asking for council. The other, in addition to the personnel for council itself, we support our district manager representative positions. We also want an exception so we don't put those out to bid because that is directly in contract, that is directly opposed to our current process for securing district manager representatives. So this basically just says we're going to sole source those. We're going to follow the election process that's laid out for these positions. And then it gives approval authorities that mirror our current finance policy. Okay. Contract duration or terms. We're asking for flexibility in the duration of our employee-like personnel services contracts to avoid lapse in essential functions. We'd like the ability to backdate the contracts to the start of the fiscal year. The guidance tends to want you to date the contract and then start work from the date the contract is signed. We really struggle with getting contracts together and signed by the start of the fiscal year, just given the flow of the state budget process. So we're asking that we have flexibility in the start dates and the duration of those contracts. And the goal here is to avoid lapse in services. Linda?
This is a very basic question. And I saw up above, you had both personnel, but then also personal services. And I just want to make sure that that's supposed to be that way, that's like to do with their personal services they're giving or something, and it's not a typo.
Yeah, it's not a typo. And this was actually discussed by AOA. They think the state statute uses the wrong term. The state statute uses personal, like PERSONAL. So that's what I have here because it mirrors state statute and state guidance.
Okay.
Really, we're talking about personnel contracts. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
I know. Linda. The rest of this is kind of housekeeping. So the bulletin refers to the state's financial accounting system. We don't have access to it. We're just asking to sub in our internal systems, which currently is QuickBooks. And then any section referring to a state employee would be understood to apply to council's contracted personnel. And then any section of guidance referring to VT buys or other specific state contracting portals, we would be seeking to post on our website and other public locations since we do not have access to the state portals. So that's a little bit of housekeeping. And again, the goal with this is to be able to continue our operations, not get paralyzed or bogged down. We can change this at any point in the future with a vote of the board and resubmit it to the Agency of Administration. So we're not necessarily locked in if we approve this today. We can always revisit and make changes. And anything we submit, anything we approve today would need to get submitted to AOA for review and is subject to being rejected by AOA. So if that happens, I would bring this back to the board with their changes. So that's all I have. Other questions?
Claire, this is Linda. Will they take these one at a time, or could they, will they potentially reject the whole thing based on one bullet, or do you not? Do you know that, or?
My understanding is this column here on the right, they will say yes, no. We will have, if they reject something, we will have the option to resubmit if we want with some corrections, but we wouldn't necessarily have to. We would have the exemptions that they approve on a line by line basis. But if they reject any, our only option would be to resubmit the entire form with corrections.
So it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
It doesn't have to be, but I do think that this represents what I think is the bare minimum to keep us operating as we currently have been. So I think if anything, functionally, if anything was rejected, we would probably need to resubmit it.
Yeah, this is Rick, and I think Claire, your last two rows of this, one dealt with vision, and then the other was the portals for. I mean, we don't have access to those things, and we're not asking for We're just saying we don't have access, so that's why we're seeking the waiver. Yeah.
And my sense is AOA has no problem with this. I tried to get them to review this and give conceptual approval before I brought it to you. They have reviewed it. They say they can't make a determination yet, but I have worked with them on developing this language. So I'm pretty confident that this will pass AOA based on my conversations with them. But yeah.
Okay.
Nina?
I think it's a great place to start, Claire, and I appreciate you bringing it forward to the board for review. In my experience, this is very lenient. I just want to make sure everyone is aware of that in terms of what we would typically be guidance we would typically operate under. So, I appreciate that AOA is extending a hand here and providing some flexibility to kind of match the, existing structure and function. And I hope that it works. But just with the caveat that it's, definitely far more lenient than what we would typically see in approved for a waiver from a state agency currently. So yeah, I think it's a great place to start.
Thanks, Nina. And I think, I'm just going to say, I think AOA understands our position that we have no state employees, we have no access to state systems. So there's only so much we can do. But any other comments here?
Okay. Hearing no other comments, I guess I'll entertain a motion to approve the policy and waiver, or is it just the waiver?
The contracting waiver plan.
Yeah, contracting, because we've already approved the procurement policy earlier.
We have approved. So Nina has made a motion to approve. I should clarify though, this would replace our current. This would replace our current procurement policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Motion to approve pending approval by the Agency of Administration.
Motion to approve
Are we
pending.
approving sending it to the administration?
Yeah.
I think
motion
I would just
to approve submission, and then if it is approved, it would become the procurement policy.
Okay.
What she said.
Very good. So there's a motion by Nina to basically approve what Claire has presented to us and explained to us. And then with that with a second and a vote to approve, then she can send this on to the good folks at the Agency of Administration. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll make that
Second by Willie. Sorry, Willie beat you, Richard.
Fine.
Is there any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none, seeing no questions, let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Very good. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Claire.
Well, thank you for bearing with me through this process. I will let you know what Agency of Administration says.
Thank you for enduring such a up and down, back and forth process. So we all appreciate it. So, all right. So Claire, you still have the floor. Per diem increase.
So I think we've talked about the rest of these items. So if for the sake of time, I'm just going to probably skip over the rest of these items. We talked about our per diem increase request. It's been submitted. We gave an update on the current state of our office space request. I will let the board know when I hear back on either of those requests.
Okay. Anything else under administration? Okay. All right then. Thank you. I see there is a break, so I'm gonna just ask if you feel like you need a break, then we'll look at the screen that goes blank and say to ourselves, you're taking a break, but we're gonna just continue along. It's 10 after 2. We do have a time that we need to respect. So the next item would be discussion of federal government shutdown impacts. Maybe we'll be less than 15 minutes since the government is now open. Hooray for us.
Yeah.
But let's talk about impacts.
So I think I'm going to turn this over to Michelle to get started with what the impacts have been, though as noted, the government is reopening. So, and then I'll have something to add, Michelle, after you give your update.
So for the districts, some of the primary impacts were that some of the districts were really struggling because they couldn't do work and charge it to their federal agreements, which has been an issue. Bennington had to reduce hours for one of their staff, but we tried to step in and offer them a little bit of additional Ag CWIP funding because they had already met all of their Ag CWIP deliverables. So I know things were very tight in Windham. So that has been one of the primary impacts. We were able to move some staff who have agreements with VACD. We were able to have them do some work, some certifications for the FAP program, or at least to try to do some certifications, to do some outreach, because not all farmers were ready to certify. And that's a state program, and we were going to pay them out of state funds to do that. And then we also had farmers, as Sarah can attest to, who were ready for payment. Their projects had been certified and they couldn't get payments. So we had farmers who had done everything they were supposed to do. They had laid out a lot of money in many cases and couldn't get paid. So for one of Sarah's farms, for example, it was $90,000 that they've been waiting on for 6 weeks. The other piece has been the impact on wetlands work, because there is a 2-month window for doing invasives work on wetlands of October and November. And so there was equipment that was under contract with NRCS managed by a VACD staff person. There was a contractor who had their equipment on site at multiple wetlands around the state to do invasives work and couldn't do it. And then also our staff person who was supposed to be meeting with those contractors and supervising the work was unable to meet with them. So that has been a real impediment to doing invasives work on wetlands. So VACD was forced to lay off or furlough multiple staff. So we called them and told them that they were coming back last night. I actually have to duck out at 3 for a meeting with NRCS about partners. So
Got moved to 3:30.
Got moved to 3:30. Oh, that's good. So at 3:30, we'll be done by then. Marley, sounds like we can do that meeting together.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Are districts invited to that? Because I didn't get an email about that meeting. I heard that it's happening, but I didn't get
No, I think
notification
it's
of it.
just the people who have contracts with them. I know you have your Mem for Magog one, but it's wrapping up. Yeah. I'll fill you in. I don't know why they're doing it, to be honest.
I don't need to go. I was just curious.
Just when I spoke to Travis, he was like, have everybody show up tomorrow. So when I talked to Travis yesterday, but now we have to have meetings. But we are hoping to get everybody back and up and running. But some of these, impacts are not going to be easily undone, like the wetlands work, like the, folks who may have lost staff that they had to lay off. So it's really going to put us behind the 8 ball, and they're going to be, from my understanding from talking with Travis, is that the priority is going to be getting farmers paid. That's going to be the #1 priority when they come back. So getting out the payments for the folks whose projects have been certified, getting certifications done on those projects that haven't been certified so that people can get their payments, and then sort of the rest of the process of going back. And they should have been, reviewing applications and ranking applications, and they haven't been able to do that. So going back and then picking up all of that work, and they'll be looking to see what timelines they need to extend, and that will probably include locally led. We'll get a timeline extension. So that's all future work, but the focus out of the gate is going to be payments to farmers and other landowners that have contracts and are waiting on payment.
Any questions about that? Additions? The one other thing I would bring up under this item is that whenever the government shuts down and federal office space becomes unavailable, we have districts who lose access to their office space, which has been a challenge. One of the things that came up during this government shutdown that was new, at least for me, was that we had one district have a public records request happen during the government shutdown, and they did not have access to their records. So that was difficult to navigate. I think we were able to figure it out because they had a contracted bookkeeper who was able to pull records from her files to submit for the records request. But that, I think, is something we need to talk about in the future, is that I know a lot of districts are interested in getting office space outside of the federal office building for the sake of just having room to grow, having more control. But I think this, the public records accessibility, as well as having access to records stored on government computers, like federal computers, is something we really need to deal with just to be able to comply with state law. So that's a new topic that we'll be thinking about. Council did put out some money, one-time funds from the legislature and this is not this current fiscal year, this was last fiscal year, but the way we tried to use those funds to support open meeting law compliance. A lot of people requested things like meeting owls, but a lot of people also used those funds to get laptops that were not federal laptops and to get emails that were not federal emails. So some districts have already made steps in this direction. We may want to consider for council in the future, figuring out ways to support with additional funding any districts who need to take further steps to distance themselves from the federal reliance on the federal system. So just putting that on the radar. Corey, Sarah, I don't know if you have anything to add on this, but that was new for me. But.
No, I think that pretty well sums it up. Sarah?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to offer. I think it's just what everybody would expect.
Okay. That's all we have for the shutdown line item then.
Okay. Yeah, no one wins in a shutdown. Nobody.
We do have Nina.
Nina.
I'm going to just give a little bit of, this is Nina, slight good news. We understand the funding extension or the funding package to include a 1-year authorization of the Farm Bill. And we understand that to include funds for the programs that we interact with most commonly through USDA and authorization for those programs to happen, which I think sometimes folks don't always remember, but programs like, I'll give CREP as the example, they need to be authorized, right? And they're authorized through the term of the Farm Bill. So we have continuing resolutions that authorize them to continue, and then the spending bill included authorization for Farm Bill programs. So that's a generally positive thing, not in the realm of not so positive updates on the federal government side. We at least have that piece.
Yeah. I had a question. I'm guessing Michelle can answer. So my understanding was those authorizations are for the rest of the fiscal year. Just
yes, we have the authorization and the funding.
Does that suggest that even if there was another shutdown in January, that probably the USDA service centers stay open?
But they didn't need to close this time, right. So that's the trick. But legally they will not need to close, and so the administration might decide otherwise on January 31st. Should the CR run out without being renewed or a budget being passed. But yes, that there was a minibus that passed 3 appropriations bills.
And which 3 were those?
USDA, the legislature itself, so the money to fund Congress, and military construction. So those are the 3. But as Nina said, this is not a great. It's good to have those reauthorized, but not having a farm bill means that we don't have any improvements in those programs, some of which Vermont has been waiting for, like a bill that makes a technical fix to the CREP program that Vermont needs. And there's a bill that was originally included in the Senate version of the Farm Bill, and because the Farm Bill was never passed, that's sitting there. So there are other things like that that just aren't happening because we aren't getting a full Farm Bill. We're just doing these fixes. I haven't looked to see, Nina, maybe you know, does this include what the so-called orphan programs that were left out of the last continuing resolution, as it were, for the Farm Bill that kept the authorization for the major programs? Do you know? Because that was like the organic transition.
But I can send you
Okay.
some resources. I got to dig in a little bit deeper. I just got the
Yeah,
footnotes.
that's okay. I'll either ping my old colleagues or read the CRS report. But yeah, so like the organic transition program was one of the ones that had been orphaned previously. So.
I don't see it in the summary that I got.
Yeah.
The organic thing.
Yeah, I'll just shoot Daryl an email and ask him, and I can share the results of that.
Okay. If that concludes our discussion on this item, then we'll move along to the drought of 2025 that may be over or nearing its completion, but
Feels like it's over.
We have had some rain recently. I had this agenda item here because this has been such a big impact and such a big focus this year. This would be just sort of general sharing. If anybody has any updates or items that you wanted to talk about with the drought. I know for us, Jess has been participating in the statewide drought task force. So we've been involved in those weekly meetings in trying to facilitate information exchange. The big thing that we found coming out of the task force in general was that the need for anecdotal reporting is really, really high. And there's been a disconnect between some of the agency messaging around the need for reporting and what people are hearing on the ground. And so some of the districts kind of stepped up to do some more direct outreach to farmers and other landowners just to explain why reporting is so important and where to go to report, in part because there were a lot of different types of reporting. So like reporting dry wells was different than reporting shortages of, or like difficulty with water haulers was different than reporting, you know, a federal impacts called Seymour system. So the Seymour system turned out to be one of the more important for getting anecdotal data to the National Weather Service, which was making the determinations on how drastic the drought was and where it was impacting. So we learned that and tried to disseminate that information. But that's been the big overarching update. And I guess I'd just open it up to anybody to add either any ongoing concerns that you see or questions that the drought has brought up or anything, other updates, Nina?
I can just share so on the note of many places to report, I think we've learned this last couple disasters, trying to obtain clarity in the most important reporting resources is very complicated in the web of state and federal programs. But I agree with what Claire stated. In terms of Seymour reporting was crucial. The agency did put together a drought survey, you know, probably about a month or two into this, right? So really focused resources on Seymour reporting for a period of time, but in recognition of what we would consider a gap in services around episodic droughts, which we anticipate are going to continue to increase as a result of climate change. It's really important for state agencies to be able to understand the impacts, the extent of impacts, and the type of impacts. And so that's really where our types of survey reporting have come in the last few years. And as a result of flood survey work, the last couple of years, we were able to secure additional funding for recovery assistance and support our congressional delegates to make that fight. And so that's, I'll just name, like, the goal of this survey is really to advocate for additional resources. But you can see there was a high concentration in Addison County in terms of impacts and number of producers who reported impacts. But for those who did have impacts, you know, 60% of whom indicated it was the worst they'd ever seen, with estimate on losses being almost $14 million. So this is live, it's on our website, and if you click on a specific county, it'll update to sort of see the types of effects on a given county or vice versa on a specific group of producers. You can kind of like zoom in on specificity there. So it's an interactive dashboard. But I think, you know, the key things for this group to really be aware of is as conservation districts think about programming, right, awareness of needs, you know, insufficient pasture for forage, right? So in supporting farms with, let's say, grazing planning, right, and making sure to sort of take into account these types of impacts that we're starting to see because it's going to become more regular. And this is really a resource to understand the types of impacts farms are seeing, how we can alter or innovate in our programs to better support folks when they are facing these types of challenges. But I will just mention, you know, we all know what the soil types are in Addison County, and I think it just speaks to like farmland conservation and preservation in other parts of the state who, you know, didn't have as extensive impacts, but maybe had the same amount of rainfall, right? So your soil type, everyone knows this, is a huge piece of the puzzle here, right? If you have good soil, you can probably withstand and be more resilient in a time of drought. Whereas, you know, I think part of what we're seeing here is really a soil-based consideration in terms of impact. And again, this is just like anecdotal, my personal thoughts on it. But so this is on our website. I don't think I have access to the chat, but I can share a link with Julia so folks can navigate this and share it with their membership and with their boards.
And I want to add a little farmer input. We also had a wet spring, and that delayed planting, and then it got whacked with a drought. And you've got what we call a knee high to an elephant. Anyway.
Thanks, Richard.
It didn't have the moisture anymore, and it dried it right out, and they planted late, so that was a bad start. And then you got a drought, so you got corn that was like 3 feet high. But anyway, it started because it was too wet. If they could have planted earlier, they might have survived better, but they couldn't. And again, you're correct. It's the soil types too.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, I think, you know, as there's a bunch of scientists and soil people on the call, you know, the farmer anecdotal input in this process. And again, this is part of why the agency put together a drought survey is key to understanding the types of impacts that we need to start planning for when we're working with farms on improvements and changes to their operations.
Yep.
So
This is
Nina,
Linda.
Rick,
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I will just say down here, where I was going to say blessed, but we've worked hard, I will put it that way, to have good soils. And so we didn't see some of the impacts that I think many people did, but we did put our cows, had to give up having our cows out on pasture, our milking cows out on pasture a lot sooner than we would normally. And, you know, that impacts having to feed them, put up feed. Also, it impacts the amount of manure in our storage and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there are multiple facets to it, as you well know, Nina. But we consider ourselves some of the lucky ones that we have plenty of feed and we're able to sell some to some people that didn't. But it was an interesting year.
I would just add that we are still in drought. Everything except a little sliver of the Champlain Valley is pretty much still in drought, and the Northeast Kingdom and down through the central side on the eastern portion of the state is still in severe drought. So it's going to take us quite a while to recover and for water tables to be replenished and all of that fun stuff.
I would echo that and just say that the number of dry wells that are been reported in the state that number has been going up, even as we get more precipitation, just because it will take a while to replenish the water table. So that's kind of a lingering piece of the recovery that will take a while longer. And you know, one of the conversations in the statewide drought task force has been a recognition that the impacts from this event, even once we're technically out of drought, the impacts will likely be multi-year, particularly with things like fruit trees that may have been impacted. This will, you know, affect future year's harvest potentially and other infrastructure that may have been damaged as a result of the drought. So I don't think this topic should, even once we're out of drought, we should probably keep this on our agenda for a little bit. But the other thing I think that came up from at least my perspective is that we had a lot of people wanting to shift operations to help with the drought, but we're facing constraints with their funding sources. So a lot of our funding sources come from the Clean Water Fund, which we tried to make a little bit of an argument that drought is related to clean water, tangentially, but ultimately we weren't able to shift all of our resources in that direction because of the limitations of our funding sources. So I think this speaks to a need for funding, either more flexible funding sources or funding sources that can be brought to bear in times of drought specifically at the statewide level. Because I think our ability to shift rapidly to meet emergent needs was hampered, just from what I saw. So something, again, maybe to consider within the agencies and also with our lobbying efforts. But
And I would just add to what Claire said, that one of the barriers that we're definitely facing in terms of being able to help farmers strengthen their ability to mitigate drought on their farms is a lack of engineering staff, because these are irrigation practices, they're water catchment systems, there are second water sources for existing irrigation systems, because you need a backup in case the first one runs out, or you need to be able to combine them in order to get enough water. And so we need engineering capacity to meet those, to be able to do the practices, basically. And so there's no short-term fix. I mean, that's going to be an area of focus for the engineer that VACD hired. Agency of Ag has also been hiring engineers to try and backstop the losses at NRCS in engineering capacity. But just as we all know, civil engineers are a desperate need across the state. So I feel like we need to talk about that in every room we're in, to just keep banging that drum about we need to figure out a good recruitment pipeline for civil engineers that lets us get people into that profession, keep them in the state.
Yeah, I was, so this thing called Seymour, is that something new this year and it's called something else next year?
So it's an ongoing federal database gathering, and what the state climatologist was advantage of reporting to Seymour is that data is readily available and accessible, and it starts to provide a good basis for comparison of droughts year to year, as well as providing sort of qualitative backup. Because one of the conversations that I had with her was she was saying soil moisture tests are showing drought it was at that point in the NEK and in Bennington County, that they just didn't have the qualitative data, the qualitative information of reports from people living in those areas to back up what they were seeing on the soil data. And so the folks who are looking at the severity of the drought are looking at both that we tested the soil data and that anecdotal information coming in saying my well ran dry, or my irrigation system is running dry, or I can't put my cows out on my pasture because there's not enough, because the pasture is so poor quality, the feed is so poor quality. I've got cracks in my landscape from dried soils. So getting farmers and landowners to report that was a real priority. I know Bennington, the Bennington district, made a real effort to start getting some Seymour reporting in, because the state climatologist really highlighted that as a way that districts could help, would be to support people in getting reports into Seymour.
So Seymour is not driven by state.
No,
it's driven by landowners.
Yep, and TA providers can file on behalf of landowners. So
Okay.
You can check a little box that says I'm a TA provider, and you can upload pictures, you can upload all kinds of information. But that's good also to have that data to compare to previous droughts as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the challenges that the state climatologist has been really talking about and warning us about drought for a long time. Because she's just been really concerned that we were ill prepared for drought in Vermont, and it was going to continue to hit us. And I know a lot of farmers took heavy losses in Addison County again in 2020, too. And then we were in drought in like 35% of the state when the 2023 flooding hit. We were actually in drought in a large portion of the state when that hit. So there are farmers who've been really seeing consistent losses to drought depending on where they're located over the last 5 years. It just doesn't attract your attention the way the flood devastation does, because it's slower and more insidious.
Okay. So I guess that concludes our drought discussion. DM rep report.
Sure. So my main update would be that I attended that NACD Northeast Regional Conference earlier this fall in Syracuse. I shared some notes I took from that I know Claire passed out to everybody. Sorry, they're a little like stream of consciousness. I kind of sat in the back and typed the whole time. A few key takeaways I felt from those couple of days, or 3 days, was a lot of talk around the National Conservation Planning Partnership. And there's just, there seems like there's an increased awareness that there's going to be a need for districts to take on more of the planning work that NRCS has historically done. I think leadership at NRCS is envisioning those processes being almost entirely handed off to districts at some point. And so there's, of course, a need to get district staff trained up to be able to be certified planners and do that. I think that's a steep climb everywhere, and probably a really steep climb in some parts of the state where they don't have those close relationships with NRCS. Let's see, Michelle led a locally led presentation about the locally led process in Vermont that I and Jennifer Byrne from White River and Michael Fernandez from Bennington participated in. That was really good. It was well attended, and there was a lot of interest from the attendees that I think folks would like to copy that process, and it was nice to have Vermont be seen as a leader. There are a lot of concerns raised around the proposed reorganization at NRCS. They're talking about pushing, currently the state cons answer to DC, so every state has sort of a voice, and they're talking about pushing that out to like the regional scale. And so the proposed plan would not have a Northeast regional person or hub at all. I think it was like North Carolina.
Yeah, there was like 5 state hubs and the Northeast doesn't get one. And so NACD Northeast has really been pushing back on that.
I think.
Let's see. Yeah, those were the main things. Jennifer and Michael presented about their Farm Force program, which is fantastic.
And one more, the Vermont's UAV team presented about their work. And they're going to be presenting in San Antonio at the National NACD conference as well.
That's so cool. That was a very Vermont heavy conference. I know that we're getting ready to submit an Ag CWIP proposal through council. That's now officially been announced. I think districts are eager to talk more about how we're going to structure that and what we want to change since the last time. Can't read what I wrote there, so it must not have been that important. I know Sarah's been doing some work on the locally led survey and trying to standardize that. I don't know if you want to talk at all about that or anything else.
Sure. Yeah. We, last year when NRCS, provided some small bits of funds for districts to engage more in the locally led process, we hosted a training and a whole planning process through a work group. And part of that was districts interested in having a conversation of sort of standardizing our survey that we do for the locally led process so that we could potentially aggregate the data and deliver more of a statewide results to state leadership, knowing that might be more of an impactful data set. So we had a meeting, not last week, the week before, I think, with districts to, again, try to revive that conversation so that as we head into this, kind of locally led planning season, we can all kind of get on the same page there. And I think what the main takeaways were, and we were talking about this at our district manager meeting too, is that we all generally agree that the questions that have been drafted are ones that we agree upon, and that if we want to change them slightly, because they are pretty broad, some districts are interested in them being a little bit more specific. Really, the bulk of the work would be working with some districts that are interested and able to come forward to aggregate the data, so that if some of our specific questions are slightly different, if we work to aggregate the data so that at least we can deliver that goal of, providing that statewide data set, seems achievable. And Bennington, Michael had indicated, that he does have some experience in that space and that he would be willing to, work with us to do that. And so that's one of the things that we've been talking about in considering the upcoming ag quit proposal, is how could we support Bennington or other districts that might be interested in aggregating that data and delivering that message. And then sort of along the same lines, I've just hosted a farm teams get together with districts, again, trying to prepare some for the upcoming ag quit proposal and how districts want to unify around our idea around farm teams, and really trying to bolster that more and working toward, delivering similar messaging and similar goals around the programming and that sort of thing. So, and sort of inside of that, also just continuing to work on making sure that we all are clear about our nutrient management planning services. That's definitely something that is, at this point, I feel like a flagship offering of the districts, and making sure that we communicate with partners about what services we offer, just thinking specifically around soil and manure sampling. And so just, we have a massive spreadsheet that shows what all the districts do offer and what the messaging is around that to our clients. And I think we're getting closer to where we're all kind of on the same page with what we offer in that services, so that, somebody like Nina can easily say, yes, districts offer free soil sampling, period. And there isn't a whole lot of, huge nuances there, so that it's hard for partners to be able to communicate that. So that's something also that I think we've been working on and thinking about with this ag quip upcoming proposal. And I think, for the district manager report, now that Michelle has been hired and things have shifted over at VACD, I feel like our work has been a little bit in a lull, just because, there was a lot of work when we were had the hiring committee for Jill's replacement, and there was a lot of committee work happening. And that, now that, our work with Momentum Communications has also transitioned, and that committee work isn't happening. We haven't been as engaged as we have been in the past, but I'm happy to hear that Claire is interested to work with us to try to, get down to the root of this question around our health insurance. I think sometimes, it is helpful to hear from VACD and council, like what do you need from this role? Because it can be a little bit of an echo chamber, and people are really busy. We ask the district managers what it is that they need and what we can bring to these meetings. But I think we just need a little bit of a bone to chew on. So if you can sniff out that bone, that would be helpful. There have been times in the past where we've had specific requests from VACD to work on, communications between VACD and the districts. And we developed a 3-page document with district managers and delivered that to VACD. And Michelle, Corey, and I did talk about that, and it would be a document to share with you too, because there still are some things that are relevant on there, I feel like, in terms of ways to improve the working relationship there. So
yeah, that'd be great,
so
because I've never seen it. So
sure, I can try to track it down and send it over to you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
and that was my other note, was concerns around premiums increases. Just that a lot of districts have those concerns.
Yeah.
So, yes, it'd be good to explore that further.
So anyway, I could start an email to folks at the NACD East Employees Union to see if we can get some answers there, but I also don't want to, start that ball rolling if Michelle, you have a better avenue. So I guess just let me know if you want me to initiate something, or if you're going to initiate that, or how that should go.
I think it would be great if you asked the Employees Association, because I don't know. They're an association, not a union, so I don't know what they've been able to do, but it would be worth asking them.
Oh, gotcha.
And I can reach out through our contact with NACD to ask about, hey, what are the options? Is there a way I can find out how others are doing this? Actually, there's a listserv I can maybe ask. I can track down the listserv there's a listserv with all of the association leaders from around the country. So I can just make a note to ask the listserv.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. And I can reach
What
out
they
to the
do.
Employees Association, but you're right. On all the meetings I've gone to, I haven't never heard anything about that, but maybe there's been some new developments with the shifting landscape under our feet. So, okay. That's all.
I think Katie's trying to say something and she's muted.
Katie, if you're trying to say something, your microphone is off.
He might be.
She
in
may be
another
working on
discussion.
something. Yes.
She's talking to Andy.
Oh. Okay. Well then. All right, Sarah and Corey, thank you for the district manager report. Next up would be the supervisory union reports, of which we were hoping to get 6. Julia just said we've only received 2.
I got 2. Thank you, Linda and Richard, for reaching out to the GMs and supervisors to get that information. I did not email them out because I was hoping to get more and then consolidate them all.
Okay.
But
And we will.
yeah, I'll email it after the meeting.
Yeah, because I think, Rick, your supervisor union has some to share, and so we'll consolidate that after the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, because
I can send it out tomorrow morning if people want to get me things by the end of today.
so when you put something on the Google Drive and we edit that, that doesn't,
I don't see it. I send you an attachment. It doesn't have a link.
oh,
So if you sent it to Dan and it becomes a Google Drive link, I don't see it unless someone sends it back to me.
okay. Got it.
I can send links if that's easier, but it would have to come from Microsoft. I could do that.
So I think we can work to consolidate the supervisory union reports. I do want to do a time check because we have 15 minutes left and 1 voting item left.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, we can either forge ahead and try to keep the updates short, or we can rearrange the agenda.
Okay.
Which,
Sorry, I thought we were going to 3:30, but if it's 3, then yeah, we do.
oh, no, you're right, Rick. We are going till 3:30. I apologize.
I wasn't going to correct you because
We can just keep forging ahead then.
Well,
my bad.
we can keep forging ahead, but I just want to, for those of us, if you did have something for your supervisory union that we can add to the minutes, that's how we're trying to do these forms, rather than talk about them during the meeting, but post the forms as part of the minutes once the meeting is over. But we are trying to get all supervisory unions to contribute for the particular 4-month period. So Julia made an effort to get us those forms. She pre-filled out what she could. And so all we're looking for is people to sort of add pertinent, relevant information, either for their district or for their entire supervisory union. So I think that's a policy that, or that's a practice that's still meaningful to try to do. So there's still a few more days left for you to add information to your supervisory union report. So unless anybody else has any questions about that, we will push on to the partner reports. Nina and Marley, you are the 2 out of 3 partners here today.
go ahead, Nina.
Okay, I'll be quick. I think the biggest update, I want to make sure that all of the supervisory union representatives and district supervisors here is that we have an open request for grant applications under the Agricultural Clean Water Initiative program. This is a large funding source for conservation district activities. And it is open until the first week of January. Generally speaking, activities that are eligible are similar to prior years. So technical assistance to producers, education and outreach, both in the form of events as well as one-on-one outreach, and organizational capacity development. I'll stress a couple of shifts or changes. We're limiting applications for proposals for a 2-year project length. We are asking folks to give a general topic area sense of events that they're planning to hold. And we're really stressing the applicant's proposal to share the ideal outcomes of their activities. So really linking like, I'm going to hold an event on this topic, and what I really want to achieve as a result of that event is these outcomes, right? The producers walk away with an understanding of X, Y, and Z, or I want to provide technical assistance, and the ideal outcome of that is that the producer will do X, Y, and Z. So again, this is clean water funded programming, and it is what I consider our foundational assistance, technical assistance. So it underscores implementation through state programs and federal programs. It's the relationship building, it's the peer networking, it's the helping people get from point A to point B. Sometimes that's soil samples, sometimes that's nutrient management planning, sometimes that's a little bit of all kinds of things in between, to get towards implementation of clean water projects on farms. And again, there's $8 million available through this funding opportunity. We typically offer it every other year. So that's my big update that I want to make sure folks are aware of, actively planning. If you have questions, you can submit them to Mary Montour, and we'll be releasing a response to FAQs received about that funding opportunity. The other quick updates I'll run through, Clean Water Fund is open for public comment through November 16th. And that is for the fiscal 27 budget, or the budget that begins next July. We just closed the seed program. We got $2.6 million in requests, almost 60 applications. So our team is in the process of beginning that review. And then I talked a little bit about the drought survey. It is still open. And one of the benefits of that in working with sort of what we consider the Ag Recovery Network is that we'll share responses to whomever the individual submitting it indicated that they'd be willing for us to share their responses with. So, if you're in your region, let's say a district region, if the respondent to that survey said that they're willing to share their information with the conservation districts, then that will be something that the agency is going to be providing to all of our partners that we work with. So on the Recovery Task Force, so NOFA, FSA, USDA, conservation districts, and others. So again, trying to centralize that data reporting and sharing to the entities that are providing services. And then the other thing I'll just mention briefly is we had an amazing stakeholder meeting last week with a small group of folks involved and really committed to the Pay for Performance program. And so we're looking forward to finalizing some changes to what we're calling VPFP, Pay for Performance 2.0. And I just want to thank Michelle's team and especially the Franklin County Conservation District, their engagement and responsive just desire to sit at the table and help us think about how to make it better in the long run. They have a huge amount of farms engaged in the program, really actively working in that space. So it's exciting. We're learning a lot, and I'd love to chat with anyone if they're interested in talking in more details about it.
Thank you, Nina. Marley.
I'll just add to some of what Nina said. She mentioned the Clean Water Board budget. So please pay attention to that deadline if you haven't already submitted all your comments. Wanted to let you folks know about the meetings related to Act 67, Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation Act from last year, to Act 67 required a review of the CAFO program, the statutory authorities, and move that process forward. It also required the establishment of a stakeholder work group, and ANR has contracted with the Consensus Building Institute. Pat Field, most of you who have been around for any length of time have worked with Pat and his team in the past on ag-related mediation and facilitation work in the state, and they're great to have working with us again. The farmers have been invited. First 2 meetings have been scheduled or being held in December. Initially, the idea was to have 6 to 8 meetings, and before getting in a report to the legislature that's due on February 15th or 16th, as we've gotten more into the discussions of some of this, there have been some changes to that. Right now, there's going to be 2 in-person meetings in Waterbury in December. Then we're going to see what's needed after that. Obviously, obligating farmers who are spread all over the state, because they're representatives from around across the state, getting them to drive to the central part of the state on a regular basis is asking an awful lot. So I think we're going to start with these 2 central meetings, and then probably be looking at going out and having some local meetings more regionally to try and get any further input after that. But that's going to be a discussion with the farmers as we get into those meetings. But basically, we're looking at providing them with a lot of information about what the CAFO program really is, because it's really interesting to talk to some farmers and see. There's a lot of confusion out there about what it means and what a CAFO permit is compared to the state permits. But asking what they need for information, what's confusing, what clarity do they need, and what do they need to move forward in reaching compliance with the state and the federal water quality goals. So there'll be a lot more on that coming as things move forward. And then lastly, Rick, just want to thank you. Last night was the Winooski Conservation District annual meeting. It was a great meeting. I was really pleased with the turnout that you guys had. It was great discussion, and really appreciate districts inviting us from the state to attend these meetings. It's always interesting to get to the Corey's meeting was recently. So anyway, they're just a lot of fun. So appreciate being able to go to them. So thank you. Any questions? Excellent. We love that.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Marley and Nina. And do folks know that UVM extension, is it Chris? Is that?
I haven't
Oh,
announced it. I was
okay.
hoping he'd be here today, but I had a conversation with Chris Callahan, who's sort of newly started with UVM extension. He's supporting Roy Beckford and will be the alternate for UVM extension going forward. He wasn't able to make the meeting today, but hopefully will the next meeting. So okay.
Yeah. So that's good. That hopefully extension will be joining us more frequently going forward. So that's good to know. So that concludes our business down to the NRCC board chair election item. So it's no secret. I'll be stepping down as chair of council effective December 31st. So it looks like this is my last meeting as chair. So I wanted to, Claire sent around a memo the other day that hopefully all of you here today got and read and understand, outlining the election process. So again, my understanding is with me stepping down as chair, we're at a point in the process where we can accept nominations from supervisory unions or agencies to be considered to vote on for the next chair. Is anything, Claire, that you want to add or emphasize?
No, I mean, I provided the statute language in the memo. It's very general. It just gives council itself the authority to designate its own chair. And that same section of statute says that a majority of the council shall constitute a quorum, and that concerns on a majority of in any matter within their duties shall be required for its determination. So those two things together, the way we're interpreting this is that council will vote on a chair, and that any candidates that are presented would need a majority to become board chair. Are there any questions about the procedure before we get into it?
Linda.
Not a question. I was going to make a motion or a nomination.
Please do so.
I'd like to nominate Willie Nickerson to be the council chair, NRCC chair.
Willie is here with us today. Willie, would you accept that nomination?
I would, yeah.
Okay. So Willie is currently serving as the supervisory union rep for the Northeast Kingdom, and on the Caledonia board. So we have a motion.
Do we need a second to the motion?
I would think so.
Yeah. Is there a second to Linda's motion?
By all means.
Marley? Further discussion? Willie, do you
Thanks,
have anything
Willie.
to say?
Are you sure? No, I'm just kidding. It's really exciting. We appreciate
We're
you.
this close, Nina, be quiet.
Yeah, well, I do want to make it clear that I'm working for myself now as a civil engineer, and I'm interested in doing natural resources conservation work. So I anticipate that at some point I will have a conflict between a job I want to take and my role as a supervisor with the conservation districts. So I feel like I can put that off for at least 2 years, but I feel like at some point I will have a conflict that I will step away from my role as a supervisor to take a job that I'm excited about.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you disclosing that up front. We do, of course, have conflict of interest policies, and if there is a conflict at any point in time, you just need to let us know. But I don't personally see that as being prohibitive for the time being.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think Willie, also thank you for acknowledging that. And to the extent that you're feeling like there might be a conflict of interest, whether as a supervisor union representative to council, or as chair of council, I think the easiest thing would be to acknowledge it and recuse yourself from that situation, from that predicament, and then you for that discussion or decision on that. So it's really just sort of, the appearance of conflict, easiest just to step back for the moment or forever, whatever. But
And I would just say, I guess for the board information, our statute does not indicate any particular term length or interval for elections. So if at any point in time you're finding that this is not tenable for you, we would have the opportunity to designate another chair at that point in time. So we're not risking any particular set terms. So we can always feel into it as we go along.
And I'll just say we're here for you. If there's, hopefully Rick will still answer his phone if you call for questions. But, if there's pieces of the puzzle that we need to sit down and talk about in between board meetings, I'll speak for myself and maybe for Marley if she accepts too. But we're here if discussions need to happen or coordination with agencies need to happen. We're here to support you and don't want you to feel like you have to take it all on by yourself. So we really appreciate your willingness, Willie.
Thanks.
any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. For those that can vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Any objections? Excellent. Willie, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Willie.
And I'll,
Now you can say, are you sure?
no, I'm thrilled that Willie is willing to accept the nomination and now become chair starting soon, January 1. And I'm thrilled that the Conservation District the Conservation District community is willing to step up and be the chair in an organization, a state agency that really deserves and needs Conservation District sort of on point. So, Willie, thank you for doing that. Don't hesitate to call me. Okay. So, update on future council meetings.
This is very brief. Julia already covered some of this, but We are switching to the state systems, so we are going to be updating our calendar invites with the Microsoft Teams information, resending out those invites. You might get a lot of emails from us just for the future calendar dates. Julia has also put together a Google group for all council representatives to try to make sure we're not forgetting anybody on emails. So, you know, we'll be a little bit more systematic in those notification processes. We do meet quarterly, so we're going to plan to continue that schedule that we had voted on in the past into the new calendar year. So for the remainder of this fiscal year and the remainder of 2026, we would be continuing on our set schedule. So our next meeting would be in February. And then after that, I believe it's May, August, and November. So that's what we have.
Are you now able to sign out this room?
I think I can sign out this room, but not the Firelight room
Oh, that's, you want that for?
for the finance meeting, but we can talk.
Oh,
about
yeah,
it.
no, that's already all booked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't know for the February meeting.
I haven't tried recently.
I encourage you to do it very fast.
I will do it.
With, and actually, you and I might want to talk actually about what other meeting rooms what might work. This is one of the largest meeting rooms we have. And if we're gonna have 2, 4, 6, 8 of us, we might be able to fit into a smaller room. Because once people come back to office, it's gonna be highly competitive.
Yeah, you let me know. I know.
Let's give that some thought. But once you get the dates set for 2026, book them all fast.
The dates are set. They're already
Okay.
posted on the website.
All right, let's get them booked. Yeah.
I think the
Didn't
term
mean
I
it.
heard was the Hunger Games of state
Yeah.
office space.
Yeah. It's
Nice.
priceless. It is
Okay.
very priceless. So is this set of noise canceling headphones right now. If anyone knows of a good brand, let me know.
They're not making the cone of silence anymore?
People have totally forgotten what indoor voices mean. Yes.
But FPR is getting them bought for.
Yeah, I heard that
DC is
too.
not. I heard that from Misty today.
I'm surprised Misty shared that. Yeah, well, yep.
They're getting what?
So
Noise canceling headphones.
we are actually ahead of schedule, contrary to my previous statement.
Fire alarm.
I know. We've gotten through the agenda fairly quick. We do have an other business line item. We could open it up if anyone has additional items.
Linda?
I think I'd like to congratulate Rick for the job he's done, and he's going to be missed.
Absolutely.
And thank you.
Are you still going to attend these meetings as alternate, or what is the regional union plan?
Yeah,
TBD.
it's to be determined, but, winter is a busy time, so February might be in absentia, but, yeah.
For you, it's busy. Some of us just get bored silly with all the snow,
But no, thank you. It's been a rewarding period of time for council. I was in Marley's position when council came maybe this close to no longer existing. And so it's been frustrating, maddening, encouraging, process to sort of see where council has gotten to today. But, I think right now, while things could be better, it's certainly much better than what it had been. So a wonderful experience in working with you all and your patience. We've gone through a pandemic and a couple of shutdowns and geez. But I think the districts and council are all stronger as a result of everything that all of us have done, and Michelle and Jill. So keep up the great work. Linda.
Well, Richard kind of stole it, but I didn't want the meeting to end without acknowledging all that you've done for this organization and for districts in general. I know you were part of it when I first came on, and yeah, it's been quite a ride. So really appreciate all your time, Rick. And I do hope you will stay around, even if it's more in the background.
Rick in the background.
He's still VACD secretary.
Yes, yes. Somehow, Rick, though, I do need to take lessons from you on how to ease back at some point.
Don't talk to her, Rick. All right.
All right. Any other business? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Don't move.
Second.
Motion by Marley.
Yeah.
I think I
I'll
will.
third
Thank you, Rick. See you on
All
the
right.
ski slopes.
Okay. All right. Take care, everybody. Our meeting
Bye.
adjourned.